Hello everybody, and welcome to one more video on big units. And this time it is the Japanese Air Force of World War II. So as you probably know, there were two main branches of the Japanese Air Force. There was the naval force, naval aircraft, the famous Imperial Japanese Navy aircraft, the IJN, and there was the IJA. Naval force was in fact called the Kido Butai, and the aircraft that were belonging to the IJA were the Iko Shidan and Iko Shudan. They had both names during the war. Um, and it is a particularly interesting period of aviation for you to read and to collect some models, because in fact this Japanese Air Force was a tremendous Air Force at the beginning of the war, because they had plenty of experience. They were at war with China since 1931, since the famous Muktton Incident, a little bit an incident that looks a lot with the one that also helped Germany to invade Poland, in which making a charade in which the Germans were the victims. Here, the Japanese also pretending to be the victims. What they wanted, of course, was to invade China and conquer Manchuria, and all the rest, if possible, of course. This is a very good arm of the military of Japan, of Imperial Japan. Of course, during the war, I mean, losses started to mount. Technology. I mean, in Japan was not up to the American standards. Even if they had some very famous, like for instance, like the famous Mitsubishi Zeros, or the D3s that were also important bombers. Um, but of course, they lost to the Americans. In fact, in terms of industry, for instance, looking at the aircraft carrier that I will speak to you a little bit more later. For instance, Japan had 25 aircraft carriers, but in fact only 18 were present, at least armed with aircraft. Um, the Americans had the same name, approximately the same number, which is 19, but plus 100. So, in fact, the United States had 119 aircraft carriers, of course. Not all of them were the big Lexingtons or Enterprise. Majority were, of course, escort carriers, but even so, you can see the difference between the industrial capacity of Japan and the industrial capacity of United States. Which reminds me the famous sentence by Yamamoto when they bombed Pearl Harbor, and he said, well, I'm afraid that we have awakened a sleeping giant, of course, relating to the problems that Japan would have with war with the United States. So, so this is the generics about this aircraft that you can see here. Let's speak a little bit about, for instance, about this Japanese aircraft carrier. Something that I wanted to do for years, especially since I made that one over there, as I'll show you. Probably you've seen it in another video, or in the posts in the this one, since the Vogue Attacker class aircraft carrier. Since I built the Allied one, I wanted to build a Japanese one also, and this is it. I built it in card, in styrofoam, in wood, and this is the Ryujo aircraft carrier. The Ryujo is in fact one of the smallest aircraft carriers that Japan had. There was one smaller, which was the Oisho, but Oisho, I mean, it participated in the beginning of the war with China, but then was relegated to training. And it was, in fact, one of the few that survived, because it took minor damage during the American bombings of Japan, and then it was scrapped in 1946, and it was its end. This one, the Ryuju, was much more important. He participated in plenty of actions during the war with China, then the war with the United States. It sunk, or at least its aircraft sunk enough of vessels from the Allies. There's a very famous, I think, a Dutch destroyer that was also destroyed by the aircraft of Ryuju. Not many aircraft inside, some 20 something. It was not very big. It was in fact one of the smallest, as I told you. But what you can see here, it is a 85 centimeter long model, which in fact should be 2.5 meters. And even so, it was one of the smallest. Of course, when you play with gaming, I mean, you have to do something much smaller, which is in fact, I think, goes along the lines of the idea of our masters, Colin and Richard, when they shorten a lot the this kind of models, like aircraft carriers, like buildings and stuff like that. Of course, vehicles and men are okay with size, but these kind of structures, big structures, they can't be um, they can't be the same as in real life. So I built this in card, mostly wood, some styrofoam, for instance, for the lifeboats. There are Atlantic figures and gun tubes for you to see. For instance, you see a total of 12 tubes. In fact, it should be 24. This is what I tell you. I mean, what I told you before. So you need to shorten a lot many of the characteristics of these large structures. And this is it. There are some Altair models on top of it, like Zeros, and that there is a torpedo bomber, and this is it. So this one didn't need to change didn't need to change for two possibilities of flag like I did with the Tacker Bull class aircraft carrier, because only Japan used them, of course, use this kind of things. Um, some figures. This one coming from Hasegawa, that one coming from Atlantic again. Now let's go to the aircraft, which is the most important thing here. So from the beginning of the war, some very old stuff like this Kawanishi E7K2, nicknamed by the Allies Half, if you want, not with H, starting with A, um, up to I mean, the latest and much better fighters that Japan had. So, where shall I start with this? This is a bit complicated. Well, first of all, tell you one thing. I'll call them mostly the Allied name, because in fact the Japanese names are extremely complicated. There are several main brands of aircraft manufacturers in Japan, like the Aichi, which nowadays is it belongs to Nissan, which is funny. Which is also a reminder that I mean Japan, Italy, and Germany were having plenty of criminals inside their governments, and some of them were obviously the factory owners. But after World War II, they happily continued their jobs, which is in fact a pity because I think it was not made justice. Millions of people were dead in the end of the war, and these owners of these big factories continued to pocket money after the war was over. But that happened in all three main axis manufacturers of all types of weapons, especially the aviation, as everybody knows. Well, and car industry, of course, also like Opel, Mercedes, etc. So the main factories were Aichi, were Kawasaki, no, not Kawasaki, sorry, Kawanishi, yeah, Mitsubishi also, and was there something else? Nakajima also. These were the main ones, and these names are, of course, I mean, you can see them, some of them, even today. Um, so there are two float planes here. There is the Alf and there is the Jake, the Aichi E13. That's why the Americans were calling them, for instance, for the male names were given to fighters, and the female names were given to the bombers, because the names of, I mean, Kawanishi E7K or Aichi E13A were very complicated. And then some of the aircraft were even very similar. For instance, when you look at the Zeros, when you look to the Hayabusa, when you look to the Franks and things like that, they're all very similar. So the American nickname was probably better to recognize the aircraft, and it is even a habit that nowadays the modeling factories still have when they are selling their kits. Generally, the nickname in the American nickname shows up. I call it nickname. It's not a nickname, but okay, you understand. It's a kind of code name. Okay. Then you have more reconnaissance here. You have Shiki, a Mitsubishi KI-46 Shiki, also called Dina by the Americans. Um, this one is Airfix, and those two over there are Asagawa. Asagawa, Altaia, Fujimi, and Airfix, and also a few Matchbox are the main contributors to this collection. There's also one Italeri over there with that Italian bomber, the BR-20. Continue with light bombers. Now let's speak about this one a little bit. One of my favorite Japanese aircraft, because it reminds me, the models from the 30s, which are the ones I like the most. And this is a Lily. This is a Kawasaki KA-48 Lily. And I'm reading in this paper that I have here, which is my memory helper. In fact, Kawasaki was one of the brands, so don't worry. When I a few minutes ago I said Kawanishi, no, it was not Kawasaki, or Kawasaki. Then no, it was Kawanishi. In fact, Kawasaki is also one of the aircraft builders. Again, I think, if I'm not mistaken, this one is again Asagawa, but not completely sure. There is a Nakajima B5N, which is in fact one of the aircraft that was carried inside the Ryuju, when Ryuju was bombed in the battle of the Eastern Solomons on the 24th of August 1942. There were Zeros like those and B5s like this one here. So they were made with Nakajima. As you can see, some of them have wheels out, others have wheels in, if I can say so. Of course, the idea is to place them not only on aircraft carriers but also on airdromes, because there was a number of battles, Guadalcanal and others, that are where you can have some nice wargame tables with some attacks on airdromes. On Japanese airdromes, and also the opposite also. It can also happen. Some attacks on the American or British airdromes, which are of course rarer. Then you have the Val here, the famous Val, which is an Aichi aircraft. It is an Aichi D3A. You see another one here, painted in the famous off-white, which is in fact a lie. But I painted, for instance, I made this one recently, painted white, knowing that it was wrong, because I had this one already. As I had a zero painted in off-white, which is in fact a misinterpretation of the color of the early IJN aircraft. Even on the movie Midway and Pearl Harbor, I think they're always showing this kind of off-white, which I make with a little bit of lots of white, of course, a small dot of black and another slightly bigger dot of cream color, in order to produce this kind of off-white. In fact, they were wrong. This color is wrong, because I think from aircraft that were taken from the bottom of the sea at Pearl Harbor, they noticed that the aircraft, it was thought that up to the 90s they were off-white, but in fact they were caramel color, slightly green caramel color, so completely different from the off-white that special cinema was thinking that they would. But I mean, it was a little bit late for that, because I had this one, so this one also stayed the same. And even today, plenty of modelers are still continue placing the off-white, which is in fact wrong. Even the cover of this aircraft, which is an Airfix aircraft, still portrays it with off-white. But of course, these kits are also pretty old. So you have the area of the zeros here, 3 zeros, two in green and another one in off-white. There are two more here. I also use them for my Tarawa setting, as they were the same model that was in that airdrome in Tarawa. Then you see over there and that one is an Aichi B7A, the Ryusei, which was called by the Allies Grace. So as you see, I mean, women's name for the bombers, and man's name for the fighters. You see over there, this one is Hayabusa. Uh, no, sorry, it's the KA 84, the Frank. Yeah, the Ayate. Japanese call them Ayate. The Americans call it Frank. This one here. Yeah, there's another Frank here also. And then there is Hayabusa. Where are the Hayabusa? Maybe this one. Sometimes I look at this different Frank and Hayabusa, and I really can't distinguish themselves very well. I need to get very close, see some differences between the place where the cockpit is, a little bit to the rear or a little bit to the front, in order to distinguish them. And it was also the same problem of the Allies. Well, moving a little bit to the front, you can see here some Hasegawa Tonys. These are the Tonys, right? Yeah, the Kawanishi Yen KA61. There are two with the landing gear in, and there is another one with the landing gear out. And this one is Altaia. The other ones are Fujimi. These zeros here are Airfix also. Fujimi, if I'm not mistaken, Hasegawa, Fujimi, Hasegawa, Airfix, Hasegawa, and over there on top, everything is on top of the aircraft carrier's deck. Everything is Altaia. More Altaia here, and you enter here a pair of Shiden, of the George Kawanishi N1 Shiden. This one is Altaia, and this one here is Hasegawa. And then there is another nice looking aircraft. Looks like a Zero again, but in fact it is what? This is the Shiden, I think, the George, yeah, the Kawanishi N1. Yeah, that's it. Sometimes, as I told you, I get a little bit confused with these names. So for some dive bombers here, you see the replacements of the valve. You can see here these are the Judys, yeah, and these are by who? Let me think a little bit. Let me see if I get there. Or better, let me see if I can see it on the paper. They are the. In fact, they are the last aircraft that I've made. And they are Judy, so I can't remember the rest of the designation. Always a little bit complicated. This is the second model with elongated nose, and this is the first model. They are all Fujimi, this with rounder nose, but very similar in appearance. And then you enter my favorite part, of course, which is the big things. You have the Italeri BR20, also used by the Italians. Of course, it was an Italian machine, also used by the nationalists in Spain. It was before the Japan could finish some more modern bombers. They bought these ones from Italy and used them thoroughly in China. But then they were relegated to second lines because they were not up to the level of the beginning of World War II, when they, of course, I mean, World War II can be considered when they started the war with China. Some of them do, some people do it, and probably they're correct. But of course, I mean, in general terms, we call it World War II since September '39. So when they faced the Americans, they withdrew these machines, these older machines, and this is the famous Betty, the G4M. The Japanese called it Yamaki, and Americans call it Betty. This is very famous aircraft, a very interesting bomber. It is my bomber, my Japanese bomber, in fact. There are others, the Nell and things like that, but I don't have them. Also an Hasegawa model. And a very famous model because, for instance, it was the aircraft in which Admiral Yamamoto died when they were when it's the aircraft carrier was flying in, which was one of these Bettys, and the escort and the Zero escorts were ambushed by the P-38 Lightnings of America, which in fact cracked the code as usual, and were expecting them in around Bougainville, where he was shot and killed. And it was, of course, a devastating loss for the Japanese. What else? Of course, the big one. Big one is this big Emily. So you can see here one of the biggest aircraft that Japan had, the Kawasaki H8K, which is not even very easy to hold, as you can see, because it's very big. This is again Hasegawa model. I mean, it's modeled with some water beneath for him to be I mean, as you can see, to be put in a correct position on the shelves or on the table if you want. And this big Emily is a very, very impressive kit, and it was in fact a very impressive aircraft because it was armed with 20mm cannons. It was not easy for the Allied airmen to put one of these things down. There were around 130 built. There are still a few that can be seen, namely in Tokyo. It's one of the things I would like to see if I ever go to Japan. I would like to see this thing live. Let's see if I can do it. But going to Japan, I would prefer to go to Sekigahara, frankly. Okay, or yeah, of course, Okinawa and Iwo Jima would be also perfect. So I think everything is more or less seen. Sorry for telling you the story a little bit, going back and forth with the theme, but I hope you have enjoyed. And this is, of course, a collection for rapid fire. My idea is to have a little bit of everything, so I can play whatever engagement is necessary. The Japanese models are not that not as many as for instance as the Germans. There are still plenty of holes in this collection, but I think like that, around 30 models, it is reasonable. Some of them, as I told you, with parked aircraft, others flying on flying mode, so I can use both of the modes for my wargaming projects. So I hope you have enjoyed. Thank you so much, and cheers. Bye bye. See you soon with another big unit video. Bye bye.